everyone, my name is Jennifer, I'm 36 years old, and before I take you into this wild, emotional ride of betrayal and revenge, I just want to say, if you enjoy dramatic, true story style narratives that will keep you hooked until the very end, please make sure you subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, and share this video with your friends. Trust me, this story is one you'll be talking about. Now, let me take you back to the day everything in my marriage changed. It started with something small, almost insignificant. My husband, Mark, had been acting a little different for weeks. He guarded his phone like it held the nuclear codes, taking it into the bathroom, flipping it over on the table when I walked by, setting new passwords. At first, I brushed it off. He was under a lot of stress at work, or so I told myself. But one evening, when he was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I never snoop. But something about the way he had been smiling at his screen lately. Smiling in a way he hadn't smiled at me in months, gnawed at me. My heart thudded in my chest as I picked it up. Just a glance. There it was. A notification from Tinder. I remember staring at it, frozen. My fingers went cold. My mind raced with excuses. Maybe it was an old account, maybe he had forgotten to delete it. But curiosity, or maybe desperation, got the better of me. His phone wasn't locked yet. He hadn't set up Face ID. With trembling hands, I opened the app. And just like that, my world shifted. His profile was right there. A fresh bio, updated photos, and a smug little caption that read, "Looking for excitement. Life's too short to stay bored." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Excitement? Bored? With me? After 10 years of marriage? The shower was still running, so I scrolled, hands shaking, eyes stinging with tears I refused to let fall just yet. There were matches. Messages. Flirty conversations with women who had no idea he had a wife waiting in the next room. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw his phone against the wall and demand answers right there. But something inside me went very still. Instead of anger bursting out, I felt this chilling calm wash over me. A voice in my head whispered, "Don't confront him yet. Be quiet. Watch. Wait." So I did. That night, I put the phone back exactly where it had been and crawled into bed before he stepped out of the shower. He slid in beside me, kissed my shoulder like everything was normal, and fell asleep within minutes. I stared at the ceiling, wide awake, a storm brewing silently inside me. I didn't know it yet, but in that moment, a plan was already forming. If he wanted excitement, if he thought he could play me for a fool, then I'd let him. I'd play along. But when the time came, when it would hurt the most, I'd be the one holding the cards. And oh, would I make sure he remembered it. For the first week after I found his Tinder, I did the strangest thing. I smiled at him like nothing had happened. We made dinner, I asked about his day. I even joked about small things he used to find funny. He responded with the same tired half smiles he'd given me for months, and every time I felt that tiny flame of fury flicker, I smothered it on purpose. Anger is visible. Suspicion is noisy. I needed neither. At night, when the house was quiet and the kettle hissed on the stove, I'd take his phone from the nightstand and run my fingers over the screen like a thief. I learned the rhythm of his app use, when he checked matches, usually late, how long conversations lingered, the hours his little blue lit up as active. I didn't read every message front to back. That felt obscene at the start. Instead I took screenshots. The profile page, the timestamps, the notifications. I made sure the status bar showed the date and time in every image. I learned to capture the headers when possible. The little details that prove a message wasn't manufactured later. Technology helped but also complicated things. Tinder doesn't show full metadata in an easy way, so I was careful. Whenever a conversation hinted at a meetup or a lunch, I screenshot the message and then dug for corroboration elsewhere. A restaurant review he'd liked, a calendar entry he'd left open on his laptop, an odd Venmo payment he'd made to a name I didn't recognize. Small threads started to braid together. I set up a folder on a cloud account he never used. I named it something boring, House Docs, and inside I made dated subfolders. Each folder had a short manifest.txt that listed the images and why I'd saved them. Cold. Bureaucratic. Unemotional. Later I'd find that tone helped the narrative feel forensic rather than hysterical. Facts are harder to dismiss than feelings. There were nights I almost blew it. Once he left his laptop open on the couch with his email visible. A subject line from someone he'd matched with that read, "Had a good time tonight, winky face." My finger hovered over the trackpad like I was defusing a bomb. I didn't open it. Instead, I took a photo with my phone that included the subject line and the timestamp in the corner. A picture of a screen isn't perfect, but it's something. Later I learned to print certain emails quietly at work. A printer log can be useful. But that's a story for another time. Pretending I didn't know took real practice. I learned to laugh at his jokes, to ask questions about his day that made it seem like nothing was wrong. Long day at work? I'd say, folding laundry at his feet. He'd grunt and tell me about spreadsheets and meetings. Are you getting enough sleep? I'd ask. He'd sigh and we'd go on. He never suspected that the woman who made his tea was cataloging his betrayals. There were moments when silence felt unbearable. I wanted to confront him on the spot and watch the truth make him flinch. I wanted to hurl his phone into the sink and demand explanations. But every time, I thought about the way other people react when they're pressed too soon. They close ranks, they delete, they cover their tracks. If I acted out of instinct, I'd lose the thread I was collecting. So I swallowed every urge. I also started setting little traps. Not maliciously, but practically. I'd leave his social media logged in on the living room TV and casually scroll through when he was in the shower to see who liked what. Once I noticed a pattern. A woman who'd liked half his photos also left teasing comments that matched timestamps on his Tinder chats. When I found a matching name in a restaurant reservation confirmation he'd placed on his phone, the pieces began to click. Friends became a refuge and a risk. I confided in Anna, my closest friend, but in slow-coded ways. He's been distant, I'd say. I miss the person he used to be. Anna's brows would knit, but she didn't pry. That restraint was good. Others love to push and offer advice that makes you act too soon. With Anna, I had a witness who knew I was struggling without knowing the specifics. Later, when I needed someone on my side, she was willing to corroborate that I'd been troubled for months. Not because she knew the texts, but because she'd heard the small, cumulative changes in me. I learned the value of time. There's a sting in being betrayed, but there's also a power in letting the betrayer continue believing they're safe. He continued to flirt, to message, to plan. He underestimated what I could do with patience. He underestimated that I could use simple things, screenshots, printouts, timestamps, to build a story a judge, a manager, or a friend would believe. The emotional toll was real. There were days I felt hollowed out, like a room with the furniture shoved aside. I'd catch myself rehearsing confrontations in the mirror, practicing lines that wouldn't give away the bigger plan. I'd stare at wedding photos and feel the weight of a decade compress into an image. At night I cried quietly into the pillow until my nose was raw. The tears didn't make me weak. They recalibrated me. They reminded me what I stood to lose and what I wanted to protect. My dignity, my boundaries, the respect I deserved. And then there was the birthday. His birthday was in 6 weeks. The anniversary calendar on the fridge had a little square marked with his name and a smiley face drawn by my hand years ago. For months I'd been thinking about that date with a mixture of dread and a strange, cold anticipation. Birthdays are public events. They have guests, cake, the blur of social media posts. They are a perfect stage. I began to plan not just to expose him, but to use the ritual of his birthday as a setting where the truth would land hard and visible. Pictures, people, the casual forwarding of an email that allows gossip to become fact. The plan wasn't to humiliate him in front of strangers for the sake of spectacle. It was to make sure that the evidence I'd collected didn't get lost in the private exchange of words where he could easily deny and delete. Public moments have witnesses. Witnesses have credibility. So I kept my silence, gathered my screenshots, and set the calendar. I bought a tiny, stupidly cheerful card for him at the grocery store and tucked it in a drawer so he wouldn't find it early. I made appointments that week that made me look busy and distant. I smiled at dinner, and every evening I added another file to the cloud folder. Each file had a date, a reason, a note, potential corroboration. I labeled things like a detective, and with each label my resolve hardened. Sometimes when I felt small and lost, I would remind myself of the simplest truth. Knowledge gives you choices. I had a choice to ruin the man who'd betrayed me in a moment of rage, or to use what I knew to create a clean, undeniable record of what had happened. I wanted the latter. I wanted a story that would stand up to questions and time. So I waited. I watched. I saved. And with every saved image, the shape of the birthday reveal grew more precise. A slow, terrible, beautiful architecture of proof that would land exactly when it needed to. The 6 weeks between discovery and his birthday felt like rehearsing a play where only I knew the script. I planned everything like a production manager. Timing, props, audience, lighting. Birthdays are rituals. People who love you show up, you blow out candles, photos get taken and later shared. That ordinary noise would be the perfect amplifier for the truth. I didn't tell Anna the details. She knew enough. Knew that I'd found something and was building a case, but I kept the mechanics to myself. The fewer people who knew the exact plan, the better. I wanted witnesses, not accomplices. I began with small practicalities. I made sure the living room TV was set to the smart device I controlled. I scheduled the party for early evening so the light would still be forgiving in photos. I invited a handful of close friends under the pretense of a casual dinner and a surprise cake. Mark believed it would be intimate. That suited me. Intimacy would make the reveal feel sharper. The week before, I ordered a small, tasteful cake and asked the bakery to put "Happy Birthday" and nothing else, minimal, so that the rest of the decor would not distract. I picked a playlist of songs that sounded like normal life, soft jazz, warm pop, so no one would suspect the atmosphere had been curated. Normality was part of the trick. 2 days before the party, I printed a copy of the most damning screenshots and receipts and slid them into a slim folder labeled "Personal." I put that folder in the bottom drawer of the sideboard, the same drawer where we kept extra napkins. It was an innocuous place that would not invite inspection. I kept a second copy of everything in my cloud folder and on a small, encrypted USB drive hidden in my wallet. Redundancy felt prudent. Evidence survives better when it's stored in 3 different places. On the morning of the party, I went to the market and bought flowers. Simple stems, nothing theatrical. I wrapped them and put them in water, then did what people do before guests arrive. I tidied, I rearranged cushions, I lit a candle that had a gentle citrus scent to mask the faint smell of anxiety that clung to me like static. When Mark walked in that evening, he looked pleasantly surprised. He was wearing a shirt I liked. His hair had that careless, just stepped out of the shower look. He hugged me in that perfunctory, practiced way married people do after a long day. "You did this?" he asked, genuinely pleased. "Of course," I said, smiling. "You deserve it." Our friends arrived. Anna, Tom from work, a couple from the neighborhood, and a few family members. They hugged him. They teased him about age with the kind of affection that only people who've known you a long time can get away with. Someone took pictures as we gathered around the couch. Someone else cracked a joke about how he was getting better with age. I laughed when expected. I poured the wine. At one point, Mark slipped out to the garage to grab something. The lie of normalcy made a small, traitorous sound inside my chest. I used the minutes he was gone to slip the USB into the TV stick. I did it with hands that were not steady but that were practiced. The living room was warm with chatter. The small screen of our television suddenly felt like a stage waiting to be lit. He came back carrying a manila envelope. He set it on the coffee table, opened it, and pretended to be surprised at a stack of silly cards. He kissed the top of my head and said, "Thank you." That single, casual thank you almost unraveled me. For a second I wanted to shove the cake in his face and scream. Instead I closed my lips around something that felt like ice and waited until the right second. We sang. He made a wish. Laughter. Candles. Flashbulbs. Everyone leaned in as he blew the flame out. People clapped. Someone raised a toast. It was a small, complete world of kindness for a moment. Then I tapped the remote, and the lights dimmed. A photo slideshow began, just pictures of us through the years, innocuous and sweet, and the group murmured approvingly. I let a few photos play. Then at cue, I hit the file labeled "Personal" and opened it. The transition was small. A screenshot of a Tinder profile slid across the screen, then a message thread with a flirty line, then a photo of a receipt with his name on the card, then a screenshot of a calendar with a lunch appointment circled. The room, which had been softly buzzing, went very quiet. At first people stared, disbelieving, like they were looking at a trick. Mark's face went a color I hadn't seen in years. Pale, like milk poured over it. "What is this?" he said, voice small. I kept my voice steady. "It's what I found," I said. "And what I saved." "You can't," he grabbed for the remote, the way someone grabs a life preserver, but Tom was on the other side of the couch and the remote was out of reach. "Please," Anna whispered. And she looked at me with eyes that were both pleading and furious. She had no idea what I'd found, but she understood enough to stand with me. On the screen, more images rolled. Messages that suggested meetings, receipts at restaurants with dates that matched his claimed overtime. There was a screenshot of a selfie he'd taken in a restaurant bathroom, the same restaurant whose receipt now lay before everyone. The slideshow was clinical. I had organized it so the narrative unfurled one clear step at a time. No room for gaslighting, no place for immediate denial. Mark rose abruptly from the couch. "Jennifer," he said, voice shaking. This is private." He looked desperate, like someone trying to close a door that had been kicked open. "It's not private when it involves other people," I answered. "It's not private when you hide behind my trust and plan dates and lies." My words felt heavier than I thought they would. They landed with a weight I recognized. Truth has gravity. He lunged for the TV once, then stopped as Anna put a hand on his arm. "Breathe," she said quietly. "Talk." "Tell them what?" He looked like an animal in a trap. For a moment he swung between begging silence and explosive explanation. "It's not what it looks like," he blurted. "They're just—" His eyes darted to the screen, to the messages. It was curiosity. Nothing actually happened. Someone scoffed. "You wrote she left at 2 p.m. and then your Venmo shows a transfer at 1:56, Tom said, his voice equable but laced with judgment. He'd been quiet for most of the night. The facts were pushing him into siding with me. Mark's face contorted. "You invaded my privacy," he snapped at me. The room recoiled slightly at the tone. He didn't sound like the man they'd known for years. He sounded small and cornered. "You made this my privacy," I said. "You made this ours. You made choices." I felt the flood, a release of months of silent accumulation. Tears which had been held like bottled water flooded out. I didn't try to stop them. They made the words simpler. I stayed silent because I wanted to know if this was a mistake. I waited because I didn't want you to disappear things. I saved everything because I needed proof that I wasn't crazy. He started to pace, flinging denials like paper airplanes. "It's not what you think. I was lonely. Work is hard. People talk online. It's just chatting." "Chatting leads to meetings," Anna said, cutting across him. She was not gentle now. "You made plans. You used his Venmo. You sent receipts. That's not chatting." Mark's father, who'd come because he thought we were having a small family dinner, rose slowly, his face a map of disappointment. "Mark, is this true?" he asked, voice small and hushed. "It's not true," Mark said desperately. "It's not true." But the cadence of his voice had lost conviction. The slideshow showed time-stamped messages that aligned with receipts, calendar entries, and even photos. The pattern was a latticework that didn't leave much space for plausible deniability. Someone asked him to leave. Not to be dramatic but to let things cool. He grabbed his jacket and muttered something about being humiliated. He left through the side door, the night swallowing his silhouette. For a second I thought he might come back and apologize or coil into some contrite, explanatory speech. Then I realized I didn't need that. The truth had been made public, and that shared witness was part of the remedy. After he left, the room exhaled. People clustered around me. Some tried to console, some were too shocked to speak. Anna hugged me so hard I felt the air leave my lungs. "I'm sorry," she said into my hair. "You didn't deserve that." I felt both hollow and strangely buoyant, like a boat that had been righted after being rudderless. I had wanted the truth known, and now it was. The immediate aftermath was messy. Phone calls, whispers, stunned faces, but it was also precise. I had given everyone a set of facts they could hold. That night, messages came in. Friends apologizing for not seeing it, others confessing they'd suspected something but didn't want to pry. My phone buzzed with texts from unknown numbers, women who had messaged him, some angry, some consoled. I ignored most of them. I didn't need a chorus of strangers telling me I was right. Sleep that night was shallow. Part of me had been strapped to a long tense wire for months. The cut was sudden and clean. I lay awake and thought of small things. The way he used to hum in the kitchen, the lines at the corners of his eyes when he smiled at me in better days. Grief and vindication mixed into a taste I couldn't quite name. By morning the world had altered. People in our neighborhood whispered. Social media was merciless. Photos from the night had been shared despite my efforts at privacy. There was shame, yes, but there was also clarity. People like clarity. It organizes messy moral terrain into something comprehensible. Mark called incessantly. At first he begged. Then he apologized. Then he blamed. The cycle repeated. I listened through the doorway, then sent a single text. We need to talk. Not tonight. The line was cold, but it felt right. A few days later he asked for a meeting in the living room. He'd bruised his public image, but worse for him was that the private scaffolding of our life had been exposed. There were questions, about our marriage, about what he wanted now, about what I wanted. I didn't have all the answers. I had my evidence folder and a newly enforced boundary. In the weeks that followed, there was the slow procedural work of repair and decision. I filed for separate counseling. We talked to a lawyer. An awkward ritual that felt like measuring the distance between two islands. Some friends rallied to my side. Others drifted away, uncomprehending of the way a marriage can erode without dramatic fireworks. The slideshow had supplied the proof. The harder work would be what came after. The birthday reveal didn't feel like revenge in the way popular culture imagines. No dramatic scream in public, no viral humiliation stunt. It felt instead surgical and fair. I gave the proof to people who mattered. I gave him the chance to answer in front of witnesses. Not satisfied? Maybe. But I wanted accountability and a public record that did not depend on his word. Sometimes I think about that moment when the lights dimmed and the slideshow began. For months I had rehearsed how to stay calm. In the end, the calm didn't feel like stoicism so much as a shield. The real work, I realized, would be in rebuilding. Not revenge for the sake of spectacle, but rebuilding myself, my life, and the vocabulary I would use to explain what I would no longer accept. The morning after the birthday reveal, the house was eerily silent. For 10 years, I had grown used to the rhythm of Mark's footsteps, his off-key humming in the bathroom, the clatter of his coffee cup on the counter. That morning, there was nothing. Just me, sitting at the kitchen table with a cold mug of coffee I hadn't touched, staring at a folder of printed screenshots like they were relics from a life I didn't want anymore. The calls kept coming. Mark's name lit up my phone again and again. At first I answered. His voice was frantic, pleading, weaving excuses out of desperation. Jennifer, it was stupid. It didn't mean anything. I was just curious. I didn't even. But then, when apologies didn't crack me, he shifted. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You made me look like a monster. Do you know how humiliating that was? The irony nearly made me laugh. He wasn't sorry for the betrayal. He was sorry for the exposure. That was when I stopped answering. Instead, I did something small but powerful. I blocked him. Not forever, but long enough for him to know that his voice no longer had a direct line into my peace. Silence became my answer. The fallout rippled fast. His family called me, their voices tight with disbelief. His mother asked if I could keep it between us, while he figured things out. I told her calmly that he had kept too much between us already. Friends were split. Some defended him, others sided with me. I didn't waste energy convincing anyone. The truth was out, and people could decide which side of it they wanted to stand on. Work became an escape. At the office, the hum of keyboards and the clatter of meetings gave me relief from the chaos at home. My coworkers knew something was wrong, but I kept it vague. I smiled when I had to, and at lunch breaks I walked outside, letting the cool air sting my skin like a reset button. At night, when loneliness tried to press itself against me, I opened my cloud folder and scrolled through the evidence. Not to punish myself, but to remind myself that I wasn't crazy. Gaslighting leaves scars. Scars that whisper, maybe you overreacted. Maybe it wasn't that bad. But the timestamps, the receipts, the flirtations, they were the anchors that kept me grounded. Then came the legal talks. Divorce is ugly in ways you can't quite prepare for. It's not just paperwork, it's dividing a life you built together, room by room, item by item. Who gets the couch? Who keeps the car? What about the savings account, the photos, the stupid blender you bought together on a random Saturday? Every object becomes a battlefield. But I wasn't afraid. I had something he didn't. Documentation. Cold, clear evidence of betrayal. When my lawyer saw the file I'd prepared, she nodded slowly. This will help, she said. This gives you leverage. Leverage. The word felt both sharp and comforting. I had been powerless when I first discovered his Tinder, but patience had turned the tide. Now, for once I had the upper hand. The weeks blurred. There were more phone calls, more late-night texts from him alternating between begging and anger. He said I had destroyed him. I reminded him gently with one text that he had destroyed us long before I touched a remote control. Anna stayed close. She came over with wine on hard nights, listened without judgment, and sometimes just sat in silence while I cried. "You're stronger than you think," she told me one night. "You didn't just survive this. You orchestrated it. You took control back." Her words stuck with me. For so long I had felt like a passive character in a story Mark was writing behind my back. But the birthday night had been my pen on the page, my rewrite of the ending. The rebuilding wasn't glamorous. It was messy, quiet, and filled with small victories. Buying groceries without automatically picking up his favorite snacks. Rearranging the bedroom so it no longer felt like our space, but mine. Learning to cook for one without feeling lonely at the table. But with each small act, I felt lighter. Stronger. More like Jennifer again. The Jennifer who had laughed easily at 25, who had believed she deserved the world at 30, who at 36 was finally learning she didn't have to accept less than respect and honesty. Sometimes, in the middle of folding laundry or washing dishes, I'd remember his shocked face the moment the slideshow began. The way his confidence crumbled in front of witnesses. That memory wasn't about humiliation. It was about justice. About finally flipping the power back where it belonged. I don't tell this story because I enjoy the pain of it. I tell it because betrayal can make you feel powerless, small, and crazy. But silence and patience, when used wisely, can become tools of strength. I found my husband's secret Tinder. I stayed silent. And on his birthday, in front of the people who mattered, I showed the truth. That night didn't just end a marriage. It gave me back my dignity. If you're watching this right now and you've ever been betrayed, I want you to remember this. You are not powerless. Your silence, your patience, your choices, they matter. You don't have to explode in rage to take control. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is the calm, deliberate exposure of truth. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it and want more dramatic, emotional true story style narratives, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, and share this video with your friends. Your support means the world to me, and I promise, there are more stories coming that you won't want to miss.